Here's my lecture notes on part 4 of the Greeks. This one deals mostly with the three major philosophers and about religious aspects of the Greek society. So, part 4. Here's our first major philosopher that we need to know. His name is Socrates. Comes up with the Socratic method of inquiry. His most famous student was Plato, and he's known as a public cadfly. In other words, he's a rebel-rouser, troublemaker, especially for the youth of Athens during this time period. And he kept on asking a whole bunch of questions that were uncomfortable for people to answer, and he basically got himself in trouble by being more or less a public nuisance. And so he was charged with corrupting the young, one of those young, of course, being Plato. And in a famous vote, he was condemned to die for charges of immorality, and he was forced to drink hemlock, in which he died, and it's a pretty nasty way to go. But he's one of the most famous of the three, not the most famous, but famous of the three. There's other philosophers during this time period, but Socrates stands out for developing a Socratic method of learning, or for gaining knowledge. Then you have Plato. Again, Plato is Socrates' student. We don't actually know what Socrates thought because he didn't write anything down, or at least nothing survives that we know of. So basically, most of what we know about Socrates comes from Plato's Republic. And in the Republic, there's this theory of forms and ideas that Plato comes up with. Again, most of you guys will probably read the Republic when you guys go to college. It's pretty abstract in a lot of ways, but it's a dialogue between Socrates and Plato and all these people in Greece during this time period. And so you might want to check it out. Then there's Aristotle. Aristotle, again, is the student of Plato. Of the three of them, Aristotle is probably the most famous of them. He comes up with a lot of different theories and a lot of different ideas about how to understand our universe and the cosmos and our place in it. He emphasizes empirical findings, rational thinking, reasoning, and thought, which is the basis of our modern day way of looking at critical thinking. And so he's extremely important for Western thought. He also happens to be, again, the teacher of Alexander the Great. Now, even though you have all these philosophers during this time period, you have other aspects of Greek society as well. So, just to for you guys to understand, again, Greek theology, it's a polytheistic society where Zeus is the principal god, along with the other ones. You have several religious cults during this time period. Rituals eventually become very domesticated, but in the very beginning, they're kind of either all men, all women, both men and women. Most of them have something to do with the gods. A lot of them have drinking involved in them. Music and drinking and partying and doing things that go with all that stuff. So, but you do have these religious cults going on during this time period. And eventually they are going to tone it down. But they're part of Greek theology. So, tragic drama. You start to have these cults and the activities of the cult seeping into dramas and plays to illustrate their beliefs, but also the reality of life, the meaning of life, the characteristics of people, good, bad, and ugly of human nature. There's a lot of playwrights. We know of quite a few. Listed below are three of the major ones. I'm not even going to try to pronounce their names correctly. Are there more? Of course. But these are the most famous ones. But that's not all the Greeks did. They also did comedy. Again, I'm not going to even try to pronounce his name. But you have the duality of, of comedy and tragedy, of happiness and sadness. And you have the whole gamut running through all of these plays, all these dramas, all these comedies to illustrate human nature. Other philosophies that are picked up during this time period, you have what's known as the Hellenistic philosophies, primarily because they are a blending of Greek philosophy and probably Middle Eastern philosophy, Persian philosophy. You have the Epicureans. They're mostly associated with pleasing the senses, and anything that's pleasurable is good. And if it's not pleasurable, then it's bad. You have skeptics during this time period. Of course, they doubt every possibility of certainty in anything. Just like today, skeptics usually are the doubters, the unbelievers, the people that question everything and think probably most things are bad or don't see it the way you do. So keep that in mind. And then you have what's known as the Stoics. Stoics during this time period kind of mean a little bit something different than what we think of Stoics. They emphasize duty, virtue, and emphasis on inner peace. So usually we think of Stoics today as kind of unemotional, very detached from the world. During this time period, not necessarily that case at all. Their emphasis, like I said, is on finding that inner peace. And how do you do that? You do things virtuously, and you do things with duty, and that's how you become a better person for it. So these are kind of the important aspects of Greek philosophy, dramas and plays, the three major philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So if you have any questions about them, please let me know in class. Thanks.